Hey everybody, just got back from seeing Star Trek Into Darkness, Star Trek 2. So we're going to talk about that. Before I get into the spoiler section, if you liked the first movie, if you liked the new approach that they took, you'll probably really like this one. It's bigger, it builds on that, it builds on what worked, it changes what doesn't, like a good sequel should. However, if what you're looking for is just a good old-fashioned fix of your Jean-Luc Picards and your Commander Sisko's, this really isn't your Star Trek anymore. It's a whole different beast. If what you're wanting is a good dose of the old times, this is not it. So, that said, let's get into the spoilerific world of Star Trek 2. From here on in, I'm just going to talk like you've seen the movie. So anything that gets spoiled for you is your own fault. I've warned you. I liked what they did in the first movie. I liked that they created this as an alternate timeline to our own. It was a really nice way of taking what we liked as Star Trek fans and setting it aside. Saying, we're not changing the stuff you love. The stuff you love still exists, it's just over here. And I was never that big a fan of the original Star Trek. I love Next Generation. I really love Deep Space Nine. I'm kind of okay with Voyager. I never really got into the original series. Now, I've seen the movies, which is good for this. But, you know, and with that in mind, and the fact that it's a parallel storyline, I tried my best to just judge it on its own merits, as opposed to comparing it to the Star Trek I knew and loved. Although the fact that there was an android on the bridge of the Enterprise bothered me a lot. Because Data's supposed to be unique in that universe. Data's the only one of his kind. And I don't see how the planet Vulcan being destroyed, which is the main game changer that creates this alternate storyline, I mean, that's the big thing that sets them apart. I don't see how that would somehow make robots more commonplace. So I'm a big fan of Data and the fact that he's one of a kind, and that's kind of stomped all over that. But I'm trying to ignore that for a second. I liked the story. I liked the villain. I especially liked the fact that, you know, I wasn't keeping up to date with every scrap of news that came out, but I was under the impression the villain wasn't going to be Khan, and then it was. And I was really happy about that. In today's day and age, it's really nice when you can be surprised. It's kind of like what they did recently with the Office series finale, where they brought back Steve Carell, despite me reading interviews that said he was not coming back for it. He only had like one line, he wasn't in there long, but he came back. And even one of the characters looks at the camera like, good prank, huh? Yeah, we got you. I like that. I'm actually okay with films and television shows in this day and age where it's almost impossible to keep a secret. I'm kind of okay with them lying to us and then presenting us with what they know we want after telling us we weren't getting it. I'm okay with that. It made it really cool. It was Khan! I loved the parallels with the Wrath of Khan. Near the end with the radiation and you just swapped the character locations. I loved that. That was great. I was really happy about that. One thing I really didn't like, and I was not expecting this to happen, was Leonard Nimoy showing up again. It wasn't necessary. It would have been so easy to write around that. Spock could have thought through and come to the decisions that Leonard Nimoy told him on his own. And it probably would have made him a stronger character for it. I thought this new franchise was trying to stand on its own. I mean, the first movie was about separating itself from the old, which I get. So you have your Leonard Nimoy, and he basically says, you know, good job, now go. The universe is yours. Tell your story. You know, we've had my story, go do yours. And then he shows up for a cameo in this to give advice to himself. It felt like a step backwards. It felt like hand-holding. It felt like we couldn't let this Trek be its own Trek, and it has to be. Because it deviates enough from the Star Trek we know and love that it needs to be its own thing. If it's gonna be successful, it's gotta be its own thing. And Leonard Nimoy prevents it from being that. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see the guy, but this needs to be Zachary Quinto Spock by himself. Another thing I can't stand, I get it, it's the future, and you've made it look super cool in a lot of ways. I like the changed looks in some ways, the smart glass and all these different things. It's great. I didn't expect you to do like clunky 60s versions of the future, so it's fine. But really, with the lens flares still? I mean, there were parts where characters were having moving dialogue, and the bottom third of the screen was this bright blue light that just obscured some of what you were trying to see, because I don't even know where the light was coming from. It was reflecting off something. So many times in the movie. There's a scene where they're walking down a hallway, and a good third of this side of the screen right here, like about, let's see if I can get this right. About that much of the screen right there, solid red. And then after a couple seconds it fades and you can see. Why did I need that? Why are you afraid to just let me see what's going on? I'm fine with it looking sleek and futuristic, but dude, they'd have to be wearing sunglasses just to operate in that environment. One of the problems I had with the first one is I felt some of the characters were underutilized. Scotty, for example. I feel like Scotty barely did anything in the first one. He definitely got a lot more screen time this go-around. I feel like all the characters got a little bit more screen time this go-around. I'm not sure why we needed the new lieutenant in her underwear. Because while there have always been attractive women in Star Trek was never a sex appeal kind of thing. That wasn't what sold it. But okay, you know, it's trying to be its own thing. Fine, give me an attractive woman in her underwear. I'll cope somehow. Kirk waking up in bed with the two cat women really, I feel, should have fulfilled the sex quotient, but whatever. I like the story. I like the twist from the second one and the parallels. It was a good story. It was done well. I got some issues. And I miss my Star Trek. I'm kind of curious how Captain Picard and his crew would be changed in this new universe. Because like I said before, Kirk and his gang were never really my people. Like, I would love to see my people in this universe and see how it's different and what has changed. The end of the movie I really liked. The bringing him back from the dead with the blood of Khan was ridiculous, but it's one of those things I think we all knew it was coming. Spock yelling out Khan was unintentionally hilarious. I loved that it was in there, but it was ridiculous. But I think they realized it was ridiculous when they did it, so. My dad and I watched Star Trek together when I was growing up. And my dad doesn't go to movie theaters anymore. He stopped like 10 years ago. He just doesn't go to movies. He waits for them to come out on DVD. We always made the joke that when I made a movie, you know, we'd have the big premiere, and my dad would just be going, I'll wait for it to come out on DVD. Now, when I actually did have a premiere for my first film, my dad was there, but the joke exists for a reason. And my dad said to me the other day that he wouldn't mind if I came into town going out and seeing this movie in the theater. And the timing didn't work out. But I'm kind of glad it didn't. Because this is not my dad's Star Trek. I don't think he would have liked it as much. And I kind of miss my Star Trek. But that's not this film's fault. You got to try and judge this film on its own merits. And on its own merits, it's a very good story. It's told very well. So, I know there are some people, I've seen some fan response that was unhappy with it because they missed their Star Trek, and I do understand. But this isn't your Star Trek, and you got to let it go. This is a new thing for a new generation. and it was pretty good. It had some flaws, it had some problems, but overall, I really enjoyed it. And you probably will too. I think that's all I've got for this. I mentioned Scotty being underutilized. They use him more in this. I feel it was the same with Chekhov. Chekhov had 1 or 2 moments. Well, they gave him a little bit more in this. So same with Bob. I feel like the entire first movie was really just Kirk and Spock. Like, that was the whole first movie. And everybody else was bit players. They did better this time around with spreading it out a bit. All the characters had a little something, as opposed to the first movie where I feel like everybody had like 1 moment. Sulu had his 1 sword fight. Well, in this one, Sulu kicks some ass. I think the original Sulu would be quite proud. And they even, made a little hint at him being a captain someday. I like that. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point. I liked the movie. Judged on its own merits, it's a good movie. The homages and parallels to the original Star Trek are good. They're welcomed. The super bright lights in your face all the time, and the fact that even though it's trying to claim to be its own thing, it's still hanging on to the old Star Trek, that's not as welcome. But maybe it'll get better. I mean, J.J. Abrams has got to go do some Star Wars, but he's going to come back to Star Trek, I'm sure. Anyway, that's it. Happy movie watching.